Welcome to the podcast. It's Chris Graham. I'm joined today by Brett Hayes, Waynesboro businessman, man about town, a gadfly, everything else. We are going to learn today about children's advocacy centers, both locally for me in the Waynesboro, Stanton, Augusta area, but statewide as well. Brett, you're going to educate us. So, welcome, first off.
Thanks for having me.
It's
Long time listener, first time guest.
yeah. It's been a while since I've chatted with you too. We used to just always sit around and shoot the bull, so this will be good. This will be good. All right. So, children's advocacy centers. Maybe just starting off, what do they do? Give me a overview of what those CACs do.
Yeah, children's advocacy centers, of which there are over 900 in the country. There are 19 in Virginia. These are local nonprofit 501(c)(3)s that started popping up in communities all across the country about 25 to 30 years ago. Um, each one of these centers is oftentimes has a rented space or some sort of physical space that they're in, and their main objective is to do forensic interviews for children aged 3 to 17. And these are children that have been sexually molested or abused by oftentimes their caregivers or somebody or an adult in their life. What the centers are set up as, and most towns, not most towns have them. Actually, there's because there's only 19 in Virginia, so they use a central location, and they'll have satellite locations like the one here in Stanton has a satellite location down in Lexington. Largely because every time they're seeing these kids or doing the interview, the kid has to come up and spend time with them and do this. They're nationally certified, licensed to do this, and their customers are only the governments, the state governments that do this. The benefits of a forensic interview are many. One, what was done in the past when a kid was accusation of a crime against a child, is that the cops would take the youngest, prettiest female cop they had and have her talk to the kid. And she would, in all good intentions, talk to the child, and the kid may tell her some information. Problem is that if somebody else then asks that kid in different leading questions or different ways, they can also get different information from them. They can actually screw up the crime scene, which is this child's memory. It's tough on the kid because they have to keep reliving the trauma. And it's really, really bad for justice because all these things introduce doubt that a good defense attorney is going to use to get the perpetrator, the pedophile in this case, off the hook. Um, uh, Crimes against children are unique. And I'll preface this by saying we're talking about something that is horrific. It is probably the worst thing you can think about as something that happens every day down the street across all socioeconomic areas. And that is, in this case, in Virginia, Virginians raping Virginians. These are children. And when a horrific rape occurs against an adult in a parking lot or at a frat party, that typically happens one time. But when a child gets raped by a caregiver or somebody has authority over that child, that may happen for years, hundreds of times. The kid is manipulated and threatened and cajoled into doing this and accepting this as being normal. And so as a result, the physical evidence of the crime often is ruined by time. The kid, I've heard stories of children at 6 years old being used as monetary policy for moms to get drugs and to get her car fixed and to get rent. And that's happened here in Stanton. And it's absolutely astounding to me. So these interviews and what's happening here is that they're good-natured people who are out there every day getting paid 75 cents on the dollar to do this job, to interview these kids, record the stuff, record the interviews, and provide it to prosecutors and child protective services. And they have a team of people that actually are there at the children's advocacy centers watching these things happen. You've got prosecutors there, you've got child protective services there, you've got therapists there, you've got court-appointed special advocates there. All these people sit in the room and they watch this interview that's happening live in the next room, and they're gathering information that they can then use to both protect the child by getting them out of a bad situation and bring justice to the perpetrator. And many of the CACs, they also have a physical exam room where a nurse can come in and do a physical exam on the child. As shocking as it may be, the main thing they have to do is check the child for STDs and for pregnancy. And then many of them, most of them have therapists, licensed therapists who are trained specifically in child trauma and child sexual abuse so that they can help kind of get the kid to a level that they can hand the kid off to a more permanent therapist, which they will need for most of their life. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The reason why I got involved in this thing, and I was telling you about a year and a half ago, I found out about the trouble that our local CAC was involved in, was it's the funding side. The funding is the problem. In Virginia, like most states, we fully fund fingerprint analysis, which is forensics, digital analysis, which is forensics, digital cracking in the cell phones and laptops and that type of thing, a DNA analysis, all these things, everything from bullet fragment analysis and all that is covered by the state. There's a Department of Forensic Sciences that does this investigation. But when it comes to children's advocacy centers, the state currently pays about 30% of their budget. And whereas they pay 100% of all the others, with children's advocacy centers, they pay 30% of the budget. This is a problem because the CACs are constantly going from one financial crisis to another. So not only do the staff have to deal with being short funded by the governments, then they have to worry about not having money to pay their personal expenses, and they have to deal with these horrific things Monday through Friday. And then on Friday night, they have to go and do a fundraiser to try and get the money to cover their bills for that month. It shouldn't be like that. It's kind of akin to the Commonwealth of Virginia paying a snowplow operator as a private contractor to clear 10 miles worth of snow on state roads, but only giving them money for 3 miles and saying, all right, we're going to pay you for 3 miles of the road. You got to go out and get the money for the other 7 miles. And when you hear it in that way, it's kind of shocking. So my abilities and my skills are not the type that can help out at the CAC, but I can help them do what they have to do because I'm good at raising money. So a year and a half ago, I got private funding to fill in the funding gap that they had from VOCA at the local Valley Children's Advocacy Center. We raised $180,000. I needed another $180,000 this year, so I worked with the local governments, Waynesboro, Stanton, and Augusta County, to each put in $50,000 each, and then we got Valley Subaru to come in with their Subaru Cares to come in with the other 30. So $180,000 last year, $180,000 this year. That's good. Now I want to take that same approach and I want to fix it. Instead of having to have me go out and find money for these guys, I think that the state should pay for this thing. And I've got a plan. And let me preface this by saying I've already spoken to a lot of people in the government. We've got some senators that are on board. Trying to get the outgoing administration to add it to their outgoing budget, not getting anywhere with that yet, but still working on it. But the plan is this: to fully fund the 19 CACs and to provide services to the 20% of the state that has no access to CACs, we need $20 million. The state currently gives $7 million in funding. Now that $7 million is in the form of $4 million of taxpayer dollars coming out of the Virginia General Fund. And then you got $3 million of TANF funds, which is
Temporary assistance to needy
temporary
families.
assistance needing families. Yeah, thank you. I was blanking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Too many acronyms. But
Government acronyms. Yeah.
assistance needy families, they can use some of that money. So that gets them to 7 million. So we're only $13 million short. And I say only $13 million because we have an $88 billion budget, right? So we're $13 million is not the end of the world for these guys. My plan is to take the current excise tax on liquid vape pens, right? It's 11 cents per milliliter in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That generates about $10 million a year in revenue. I think they need to make that 30 cents per milliliter. Nobody's going to notice it. 30 cents per milliliter. That will give them another 20 million plus or minus, probably a little bit less because as you raise the tax, a little bit of a drop off, but that's not a bad thing either. So we pay for it with a vape tax increase, and we generate the money needed to provide for the 19 CACs that are currently there, plus the 20% of the state that needs to have services provided. And it's a chicken and the egg thing. And when you think of it, you're like, okay, some hollow down in Southwest Virginia is the one that's missing this. No, Culpeper doesn't have access to CACs. Farmville doesn't have access to CACs. Culpeper's trying to get Charlottesville to take over and do their things. Like, we don't have the resources. We got to hire more people to do this. We got to put in facilities. We got to do all this other stuff. We need money, and money makes the world go around. And in this case, um, excuse me, in this case, the funds that they need, we can't get those funds until they exist, but we can't have them exist till they get the funds. So I am working close with the state chapter of the Virginia Children's Advocacy Centers, Rebecca Simmons, and trying to help her put together this plan and get the funding. But I'm basically the main salesperson on this thing, and it's been good so far. We just need to get, and it has to happen this year. We've got a biennial budget. And by the way, every year that we don't do it, to quote Martin Luther King, justice delayed is justice denied. So every year that we don't have that 20% of the state covered, we do about 6,000 kids a year get forensic interviews, and every one of those is requested by a state employee. 6,000 a year. We got 20% of the state doesn't have coverage. That's 1,200 kids a year that continue to be raped, that continue to be assaulted, that continue to be harassed and left in this deep, dark hole. And we're like, well, we'll get to it next year. Now's not a good time because we've got all these other problems. We got these federal budget issues. We got the government shutdown. We got this, we got that. They're always going to say it's never a good time. And I'm saying you're going to go to those 1,200 kids per year, 1,200 kids per year that we're not able to serve, and tell them, sorry, you just have to tough it out for another year. That's my intro on the thing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's, and at the risk of injecting myself too much in this story, I don't know that I've said this publicly before, but my sister and I, we're child sex abuse survivors. And 40 years ago, these things didn't exist. These children's advocacy centers didn't exist, and
Yeah.
boy, if they had. I have
And
served
the
on.
statistics on that are one out of every 10, one
Uh-huh.
out of every 10 people. And it's amazing, and the damage it's caused on it. And just from an economic point of view, the damage that the state has to deal with the kids that don't end up being balanced like you are, and instead end up going through the system as either, dealing with addictions or dealing with crime or all these other things. I mean, it's a cycle of violence that continues on.
Well, my sister's the other side of that. So, I mean, yeah, there's, the addiction, the mental health issues
Mhm.
that are lifelong, that aren't dealt with. And those 1,200 kids, plus, I mean, honestly, you're talking about, a $20 million budget that it's still, and when Stanton and Lexington are in the same region, I
Yeah.
mean, this is a starting point. Hopefully, we can get this kind of thing done and then maybe even further expand the services so that, our regions can get smaller and those workers can be more effective. But what is the response you're getting? You said you've been working with folks in Richmond, it sounds like.
Yeah.
We are coming up on a budget season. We're just literally a couple of months away from
Yeah.
the bills being filed, that kind of thing. Are you getting good response from state legislators?
I've got two leads on this. One is Barbara Favola, Democrat senator, and the other is Chris Head, Republican senator. They're both on board. Those are my main two folks. We are. We know that we really can't get going until we get past the election, and then we get the governor's recommended budget in December. So the other thing I've been working on, really trying to get done, is to get somebody at the governor's administration, and I've talked to a number of people, mainly deputy deputies of the Department of Education and Health and Human Services, those types of folks. Been trying to get in through the First Lady as a back door to try and get somebody to understand. Hey, let's add this to the budget. Just take that 7 million, make it 20, and then put in there the excise tax on the thing. If it's in there, it's going to be easier than getting it in there. Because the one thing that I've found among the people that aren't heavy supporters is now's not a good time. The feds are giving us a tough time with this. That's a lot of money. One guy said he didn't like the name Children's Advocacy Center and we should change it. It's like there are 900 of these in the country. He goes, well, it's too close to court-appointed special advocate. It's like the word advocate can be used more than once, and it has no bearing on what the job it is that they're doing. I tend to get a little bit ticked off when I'm talking to somebody that is in a position of power who acts like I'm standing there with my hat in my hand. I'm not. This money belongs to these children. They are Virginians. They have every right to as much justice as everybody else gets. And we're denying them justice by not giving them the resources to have their crimes investigated properly and have their perpetrators put away, but more importantly, to get them separated from these things. We can't just go in and have CPS just take kids out. We got to have evidence to take kids out of a bad situation. And and even if the Commonwealth's attorney doesn't get a conviction on the thing, the evidence that the kid is giving through these interviews is critical, and it is necessary to give the tools necessary for Child Protective Services to extract a kid out of a bad situation. So it's a horrible problem in Augusta County, Waynesboro, Stanton, Lexington. We're talking about more than 300 kids a year just in this area, right? We got 6,000 interviews being done across the state. 6,000 interviews. That's 6,000. And the amazing thing is that's maybe 1/10 of the ones that are actually happening. We're not finding out about them all. Oftentimes, it takes years before a kid lets it out that this has happened. Because they get groomed when they're young and they're told this is normal and you don't talk about this. And to make matters even worse, children's advocacy centers do not have a rabid groundswell of support. Why? Because if your kid is raped by your step husband, right, or by your second husband, as an example, you're not going to go out and try and rally for this. You're not going to go out and write a review on this. You're not going to contact your elected officials and say, support these guys. You don't want anybody to know about it. When a kid gets raped, they don't get any Make-A-Wish. They don't get to go to Disney World. They don't get to meet the Rock. They don't get to go to football games. Nobody says anything. These kids just suffer in silence, and they're made to feel like what they did was wrong and shameful. It shouldn't be like that. These kids should be treated the same way that a kid that beat cancer was. I mean, it's just as horrific for their experience as anybody else with a health thing. But yet we put them in the corner and turn off the lights. And it's just so heartbreaking to know that the numbers are not slowing down. They're going up, up, up. As during the pandemic, it got even worse. Now we've got kids attacking other kids. There's more and more of that that's going on. It's really getting out of hand, and it's the government's job to do this. This is a crime that's on the government's books. This is not a federal crime. This is a state crime, and the state has an obligation to pay for the investigations to bring the perpetrators to justice and to protect the innocent. And there's no other way this is going to happen other than the state to fund this. And with sexual abuse, and of course we clean it up. We call it child sexual abuse. It's rape. It is rape. It is manipulation, rape by somebody in a position of power over somebody who doesn't have that power. Oftentimes there's only one victim and one witness, and it's the same person, right? You know, and that's why these forensic interviews are so critical. It's the best thing we've got. And then, of course, to the people that push back on and say, well, this is a big problem. There's always problems. Kids are going to go hungry and all these other things. That's like, all right, you figure out a way to get Virginians to stop raping Virginians, then I'll stop asking for the money. But the money belongs to the victims. The victims should have the resources they need to do this. And this is a drop in the bucket compared to what the actual cost is of doing this. If the state had to do this themselves, they need $100 million to replace this. They've got these folks that have set up these things, set up these centers, put in all this hard work on this thing, taking way less what they're worth, and they're willing to continue doing that. They're not trying to even, nobody's making money at it. There's no profit margin. There's no Northrop Grumman, fat cat lobbyist that can back this thing up. This is it. And to throw in one other thing, if somebody has a question, I have nothing to do with these organizations. I'm not on their board. I'm not an employee. I am just a citizen who came across this and said, this is stupid. We got to fix this. And hopefully we can get something done this year.
That's how things get done. Honestly, is it takes someone on the outside saying
Yeah.
this is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not measurable in one sense. You're not going to have data that says here's the return on investment we get if kids stop getting raped. Um,
Yeah.
but in part because the kids in these cases have already suffered abuse. But if you can stop it, if you can at least prevent more of it, the kids have a chance. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and future and maybe other kids in that situation, exposed to that abuser, don't get abused.
So I did I commissioned a video to be made. It's about 4 minutes long. And it explains what a CAC does in the animated form. And what I'd like to do is I'll provide it to you and you can put it in comments, link in the comments on the thing. I've been trying to hand this video out and get people to see it. It's professionally done, so I'm real happy with how it does. When I show it to people, oftentimes, people will start weeping because somebody has empathy. They understand this thing. And this is really where it comes down to is that, when you present something like this, if somebody is callous about it and they don't have any feeling about what I'm telling them about, the situation these kids are in, they lack that empathy gene. And to a lot of people, they think that's weak. In modern politics, oh, if you've got empathy towards somebody else, you're weak. Strength comes from cruelty. Empathy is weakness. And I couldn't disagree with that even more. It takes strength to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and experience their pain and suffering without having lived through it. And there's an opportunity here for us to do something in the right way. We're never going to fix all the problems, but if we fix this funding thing, we had a $1.2 billion surplus 2 years ago, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
There's an opportunity here to fix this thing and take responsibility for this, which should have been done at the very beginning. And by the way, this problem is not just for Virginia. Other states are doing the exact same thing. And I'm not entirely sure why they took so long to get on this thing. We did not have DNA investigations in the 90s, but in the early 2000s, we started doing it. We fully funded that. And in the 90s, going into 2000s, we had CACs popping up, and everybody treated like, well, let them go out and raise their money. And by the way, up to when this VOCA thing ended, the state wasn't putting anything into this stuff, nothing. And and it's astounding to me. I'm really happy that our local municipalities I've talked to have seen it. And Augusta County, they raised the cigarette tax to pay for the $50,000, which is fine. That's take a vice, raise a tax on the vice, use that. No, who's going to complain about that? Right? Then don't smoke your cigarettes. Nobody died not smoking cigarettes. And same thing with the vape pens. We can go after something like that and use that to fund it, and nobody has to have any of their other pork touched on this thing. But so my main goal here is to try and talk to as many people as I can, to try and break through the noise. And you got to get through that initial outside thing, which is, well, it's really tough this year to do something, and everybody wants money, and this is not a good time for you to be asking for more money. I don't care. It's never a good time to ask for more money, and we got to get past that. We got to get to the point where we understand that elected officials are there because they wanted to do something, or at least initially wanted to do something for their commonwealth, for their state. They wanted to make the world a better place. I can't think of anybody more deserving of that than somebody who's suffering right in our neighborhoods. And that's these kids. They don't have a choice. They can't get up and leave. They can't fight back. They don't even know what right and wrong is because they've been manipulated so much. Let's help them. We can give the people that are helping them the resources they need to get done. I can't see how we could ever regret that, right? And there's a quote here. Bear with me while I'm really doing a faux pas if we're on video. You're just gonna have to.
It's okay.
It's okay.
People are used to this in this podcasting
It's,
era that we're in.
it,
Yeah.
okay. All right. I'm going to quote. I'm going to give you a quote. Then I'm going to shut up here. Martin Luther King Jr., we will have to repent in this generation not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. And I know there are more good people than bad people. We have an opportunity here to just fix this funding problem so that the people that are helping these poor kids that are in these horrible situations have the resources they need to do it. And the payoff on that thing is exponential because when you have these CACs not have to go out and do 20 and 30 grants to piece together their funding, their 70% of their funding that they're missing, and go out and do fundraisers and all these other things. That means they can spend their time going into schools and educating teachers on signs to look for, educating kids on what is acceptable, right? They don't have time to do that because they're trying to hit the balls coming in the door, right? You imagine one a day almost of every one of these CACs have a new case to deal with. So if we can get them out of the fundraising business where their funding is secure, they can then focus on getting upstream and trying to address some of these other problems that they can address, that they're trained to address. But we need to give them the time to do that.
Dedicated source of funding instead of having to beg. And then anytime the economy goes down,
Yep.
those grants dry up. Yeah, it's just let them do their job. Let the
Yeah.
executive director actually do their job instead of having to be a chief fundraiser. Yeah, no
I've
doubt about
been I've been waiting for one of these many billionaires to show up and
it.
just write the check and solve this problem across the country. They're not doing it.
Yeah.
Um, they're not going to come and save the day. We've got to save the day, and the only thing we can do to save the day is hold our accounting our elected officials accountable, and get them to get on board with doing this thing. So I'll give you a link to it as well, but I've got a virginiaforkids.com website. It's got the video on there. We're trying to put together a couple of tools that people can use. One is a clear funding request that a legislator would have to submit. Everybody can submit these, and a budget amendment. They're put in a budget amendment. I'm going to have one of those from Senator Favola's office outlining that. We're going to load it up on there as a PDF. All they got to do is change their name. So any delegate in the state can put this in and, and push that through. Certainly, it's got to go through a couple of committees this January and February. We're going to push on that as hard as we can. We still have time. If somebody who's watching this thing is involved in the governor's office that can get us to adjust the budget, and we've got the revenue to offset it and get in the budget, even if that budget's dead on arrival, if we go in there with those numbers already in there, it puts us a mile ahead because everybody's going to put in budget amendments. And this is the one thing that I think that if the outgoing governor wants to leave a legacy on this state, this is the one thing he can do. And fixing the funding for CACs affects entire generations of kids. And puts them in a position where they're now leading from the front instead of constantly trying to raise the money in the back end. It just is absolutely nuts. And by the way, when I went in there and I talked to the Valley CAC, their largest private donor that they had ever had was $6,000 years ago, right? I had local businessmen and women in this area write checks for 20 grand, 5 grand, 6 grand, one after the next. This is something people believe in. You're never going to lose politics or political points by standing up for kids that are being raped. So this is probably the easiest political thing for anybody to do in this day and age. It's just because it involves money and you have to ask for it. Everybody acts like it's impossible. It's not. The only thing that's rocket science is rocket science. All right. This is simple. Change the number from 7 million to 20 million and change the excise tax on vape pens from 11 cents to 30. Done. Problem solved. Now, who can make that decision? Who has the power to do that? That's what we got to do.
$20 million in an $88 billion budget is a rounding error if it's even
Yeah,
that. So it's
yeah.
nothing. And for I know that this especially the podcast being listened to, the Facebook and YouTube videos are being watched by staff and some state senators and state delegates. You're going to see this face over here a lot in Richmond in the next few months. So be used to him getting in your face. And I know I've known Brett for a long time. He will let you hear it.
I've
If
never
there's
said anything bad to you in my life.
no, not at all, not at all. But as far as if I had to pick somebody to advocate for an issue, whatever the issue might be, it would be Brett Hayes. So
Thank you.
this issue has the right guy fighting for it. Well, Brett, thank you so much for your time, your advocacy on this, and let's talk about this again coming up soon.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.